Good morning. Members, officers, and any members of the public who are joining us, welcome to this meeting of the South Cambridgeshire District Council Planning Committee. My name's Councillor Peter Fain. I'm the Vice Chair of this committee. However, our Chair, Councillor Martin Khan, has sent apologies for this meeting, so I will be chairing this meeting. I'd like to propose that Councillor Peter Sanford assist me as Vice Chair for this meeting. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Bradnam, thank you. Can I take that by affirmation? We all agreed? Thank you. I won't ask for any against or abstentions on that one. Thank you very much. Just let Councillor Sanford get settled and then we'll start. Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Just a few announcements from me. I would ask those who are joining us remotely to ensure that their camera and microphone is switched off unless they're addressing the committee. And committee members present in the chamber, I will now, each one of you, to introduce yourselves. Members, after I call your name, please turn on your microphone and confirm your presence. As I said earlier, my name is Councillor Peter Fain. I'm member for the Shelford ward, and my Vice Chair is Councillor Peter Sanford.
Thank you, Chair.
No, I'm just trying to join the committee, so I'm not, no. Yeah.
Right. Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Good morning, members. I'm Councillor Anna Bradnam, and I'm one of the members for Milton and Waterbeach ward, subbing for Councillor Judith Rippeth.
Councillor Bill Hanley.
Good morning, everyone. Bill Handley, one of the members for the villages of Over and Willingham.
Councillor Jeff Harvey.
Yes, Councillor Jeff Harvey, I'm the member for Horsham ward. Thank you.
Councillor Dr. Jimmy Hawkins.
Good morning, Jimmy Hawkins, Caldecott ward.
Councillor Mark Howell. Come back to Councillor Howell in a moment. Councillor Dr. Richard Williams.
Good morning, Chair. Richard Williams, I'm the member for the Whittlesford ward.
And Councillor Eileen Wilson.
Good morning, Councillor Eileen Wilson, member for Cottenham and Rampton ward.
And perhaps Councillor Mark Howell would like to have another try.
At last, yes, Mark Howell, member for the Caxton and Papworth ward.
Right. Unless I'm very unobservant, that is all of us, and we are quoried. I can confirm that. Members will have noted that Phil McIntosh has left us, and there will be a new delivery manager, senior planning support for this committee in due course. I'll introduce her in the future, but for the moment, Philippa Kelly, who is delivery manager for strategic sites, is stepping in to be our senior support officer for item 5. And then I will introduce you know already, Jane Rodens, interim area development manager, who will be our planning support for the rest of the meeting. And we also have with us today Vanessa Blaine, our senior planning lawyer, Lawrence Damari Homan, who's the Democratic Services Officer, and I'm glad to say we have Aaron Clark back with us to provide our technical support from Democratic Services. We will be joined by various case officers throughout the meeting, and I'll introduce them as they join us. If at any time a member leaves the meeting, would they please make that fact known to my Vice Chair so that it's recorded in the minutes. We'll take breaks as and when they're needed. I propose to take a break at 11 o'clock and between items. If it seems that it's appropriate to combine those two, we will. Now, hopefully members will have received the main agenda pack, which is dated 1st of August, and the plans pack dated 2nd of August. 2 supplements were published on the 7th of August, which contained the minutes of the previous meeting and an update report amending conditions for item 5, which the case officer will refer to when we get to that item. Could you just confirm that you have, or make sure that you have received all those papers? Thank you, members. So item 2 on our agenda today is apologies for absence. Lawrence, any apologies for absence today, please?
Thank you very much, Chair. 4 apologies today. The regular Chair, Councillor Dr Martin Khan, also Councillors Ariel Khan, Judith Rippeth and Heather Williams. We have Councillors Anna Bradnam and Mark Howe kindly joining us as substitutes today. Thank you.
Thank you. And members, we now come to item 3, declarations of interest. I'm going to start with a declaration in relation to item 6, relating to Cottenham. Members will recall that we took a unanimous vote to refuse an application on this site on 19th of January 2022, as discussed in the report. Quite a lot has happened since, as the case officer will explain, and I declare that having been a member of the committee on that occasion, I come to this with a fresh mind. Other members may choose to make the same declaration, or we can take that for granted for those who are present. Councillor Anna Bradnam.
Thank you. I made the same query to Vanessa Blaine, and I was advised we're coming to this as a new application, and so I come to this matter afresh, but I was part of the committee that gave a unanimous refusal last time. Thank you.
Councillor Eileen Wilson.
I too was a member of that committee, and I'm also the member for Cottenham.
Right.
But I do come to this afresh.
Right, we seem to have started a trend here. As I say, I think this is a general declaration which covers all of those who were present at that meeting. So unless members want to make any further declarations of interest, let us move on. So we then come to other interests to declare in relation to any item of business on this agenda. Can I take it that there are no other interests to be declared? No. Item 4 on our agenda, as usual, is the minutes of the previous meeting. And we have before us the minutes of the meeting held on 12th of July. These were published as a supplement. Councillor Wilson.
My name is missing from the councillors present, but throughout the minutes I'm there as voting, so I was there.
Thank you for that correction. Councillor Sanford.
Yeah, I've notified Lawrence of a couple of changes needed, including my name missing from voting on one of the applications, so I'm happy to authorise the minutes.
Lawrence.
I will quickly, apologies, there are a couple of errors in this. I will share my screen just to clarify what is being updated, if you bear with me. So as Councillor Wilson stated, your name will be included at the start, apologies for that. Item 6, the number in the vote here is correct. Councillor Sanford's name is not included, that is an error. I do apologise, Councillor Sanford. So approval will be with an amendment to include that. And then further down, I do apologise, and just in this line here, the insertion of an of to read responded to a number of member questions. I believe that is it from me. Thank you.
Right. What I'm going to ask you to do, if you would, is to keep those minutes on the screen and we'll just go through them page by page, only to affirm that we are content and that there are no other amendments. So if we could call up page 1, which hopefully members have before them in the supplement. Are we happy with that? Page 2. I think I'm confusing us with the numbers at the bottom of the page are of course slightly different. This is page 2 of the minutes, maybe page 3 of our papers. Page 3. Page 4, page 5, Page 6. Page 7. Page 8. And that is the end of those minutes. Can we therefore confirm that we approve those minutes by affirmation?
Subject to those changes.
I propose that we. Councillor Bradnam.
I will abstain because I wasn't at that meeting.
Fair enough. I suppose I better have a seconder. Thank you, Councillor Sanford. Can we then affirm that we approve those minutes? Councillor Jeff Harvey, I assume that's a sign of affirmation, or did you have a question or a comment? I don't believe I was at that meeting. Okay. Right. Thank you. So we've approved those minutes, and we come therefore to item 5, which is land at Welcome Genome Campus, Cambridge Road, Hingston. It is before us because the Parish Council have called it in. This is the construction of 2 bridges and all associated structures, and enabling works and demolitions. The case officer will give the full description at some point. And the key issues here are the principle of development, the transport and highways impacts, trees and landscape, drainage, and the impact on the conservation area and heritage assets. The recommendation before you is to approve, and the presenting officer is James Tipping. I would just remind members before James gives us his presentation that the committee met publicly for a developer briefing on the design code for the wider development, and that was on the 19th of May. And there is, of course, as referred to earlier, the update sheet amending some of the conditions which James will refer to. So, Mr. Tipping, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, members. So I should just share my presentation. Hopefully that's come up for everyone. So, yes, this is the full planning application under reference 23/00482/FUL. It's land at Welcome Genome Campus, Cambridge Road, Hingston. This is for the construction of 2 bridges and all associated structures, ramped walkways, stairs, lifts, boundary wall, footway and cycle paths, lighting, utilities, construction access, construction compound, hard and soft landscaping works, planting, tree removal, earthworks, drainage infrastructure, surface water drainage features, and all necessary works and demolitions. Hopefully that's the only time I have to sort of say that description.
Thank you.
As you referred to, Chair, there was a supplementary sheet which updated a condition. That condition was condition 8, the agricultural impact assessment. That just updated a revised or updated assessment. So it's just a change of date to that particular condition rather than any other wording within that particular condition. That is clear. Also, I have other updates, in particular to 3 conditions which were amended post the publication of the committee report. So as you can see there on the slide, that's the full wording of the proposed condition. So this is a condition 3, and this covers biodiversity net gain and the LEMP, Landscape Environmental Management Plan, which is short for. So that's the full wording. I don't need to read it out, Chair. Thank you. And as you can see here, conditions 18 and 20 within the report have been amalgamated and now read as follows. As you can see there, the full wording is now condition 18, which is the wall details. condition A19 remains the same wording as within your pack. And then a new condition 20. This is related to the detailed materials. Again, that's the full proposed wording. So just moving on to the presentation. Just starting with the site location plan and the block plan. And I will use my pointer for this. So you can see there on the site location plan, you see that the full extent of the red line boundary, covering a site area of 3.09 hectares. On the right-hand side, you should be able to see the block plan there of the proposal. You'll be able to see the two bridges. So this is the northern bridge, and then below is the southern bridge. You also have a series of additional footpaths, which then link into the ramp detail and the staircases, and also the lift, which is just about located where my cursor is. Similarly for the southern bridge as well. More widely, here's the existing construction access, which is existing for the current construction that's going on with the existing campus. And then there's the link road through the existing road, which links through to this existing car park, which is referred to as car park D. This will be used.
James, can I just stop you a moment? Can I just check with members that you can see the cursor? You can all see that, right? Yes. Okay, please carry on.
That's fine. Thank you. Yes, so the car park will be used as a storage compound or construction compound, or part of it will be as part of those works, but would turn to being used as a car park for the foreseeable future. I think it's just important just to highlight the wider context that the site sits in as well. So you can see here at the bottom of this sort of wider plan map, you can see where the site sits. So on the right-hand side is the A11, which runs north to south. You have obviously Cambridge to the north there, and the sort of the surrounding villages. On the right-hand plan, this shows the movement strategy associated with the wider development. I think this is an important plan because it shows what's existing in terms of cycle and pedestrian movements, but also proposed as well. But also you can see the villages of Hinxton and its relationship to the site, and also the villages of Ickleston, Duxford and Whittlesford there just to the north. So just want to go through some of the planning policy and site constraints associated with the site. As you can see, we have Hinxton, the settlement boundary to the north there. When you're looking at the site allocation plan, and then you can see that the site, although it's not overlaid on that particular image, and so the site is partially located within an established employment area. It's partially located within the Hinxton Conservation Area, which is that pink line. Hinxton Hall, which is a Grade 2 star listed building, I sort of highlighted that with a red star. That's just above where it says E/15 to E. And then the parish church of St Mary and St John the Evangelist in Hinxton, which is the further red star to the north there. There are existing trees within the site, and the site is in flood zone 1. So I think it's important to understand the wider context that this particular proposal sits within. As members will be aware, planning permission was sought and gained for outline planning permission for 1,500 dwellings, commercial uses, hotel, conferencing, leisure and education facilities on land that sits adjacent to Hinxton Hall and the junior campus. As you can see, the parameter plan is shown there which is an amalgamated parameter plan. It's important to understand the relationship between, as I say, the application site, or those two particular bridges, and the proposed development which will come forward within the expansion land. So the expansion land is the land east of the A1301, which runs slightly diagonally from north to south there on the plan. As you can see,
Councillor Hawkins, sorry.
Yeah, I just wondered if if you could use your cursor to
my
actually
cursor, yes,
indicate
that's a very
the
good
areas.
idea. Yes, use the cursor.
Thank
So
you.
this is the A1301, just run my cursor through there, which links onto the A11. So it's part of the parameter plan, or the amalgamated parameter plan as shown here. We have the indicative crossing points, which there are several of. And you can see here, so there's the broad location for that northern crossing, which is obviously indicated as part of the full application as a bridge, and then the southern crossing point, which again is indicated on the full application as a southern bridge. As part of that, I would also say that we did have the A1301 realignment works, which has been approved as a reserve matters, which I'll come onto shortly, but that shows the proposed northern and southern roundabouts. Although there is an existing roundabout that serves the existing campus, there will be a much larger roundabout that serves that wider development. So again, as part of that context, it's important to understand how the bridges fit and align with the wider development that will come forward. So there are development parcels within the wider development. So development, or parcel A, which is located in development area 1, as you can see here, there's a relationship or connection to that northern bridge that's proposed. Similarly for the southern bridge, which is linked to parcel D. There's also a relationship to the existing campus, as you can see there within both images, to do with the northern section and the southern section. There is an existing relationship to those existing facilities, whether it's the existing conferencing facilities to the north or the existing campus and commercial activities that are occurring in the south. So this is the illustrative layout plan for the wider site. This sort of gives I guess, a bird's eye view, which is coming up here. As you can see here, we have the village of Hinxton located here. I've circled the two bridges. So this is the northern bridge, indicated here, and the southern bridge located here. And you can see that there's this relationship to the expansion land and the built form and the activities that will occur within those buildings and the wider residential parcels as well. But also, again, just emphasising the existing campus and the activities that occur on site. I just highlighted where North Road is, because it's not particularly clear on this image, but the North Road junction is just where my cursor is hovering, just for context. So looking at the bridge detail, just with that particular north, that's sort of the image at the top there, that is a sort of cross section, so that's not its full width, just to be clear. But as you can see there, that the proposed bridge has planting across the entire deck, which is sort of a feature of this particular bridge. And sort of the makeup of that bridge, I'll just give some details in terms of, again, this is within section power 3.3 within your report. So the bridge width is at, it spans between 6 metres at its narrowest points to 10 metres So it spans 63 metres across its length. The height underneath the bridge covers a 5.3 metre height, and the overall height of the bridge to its top is around about 7.3 metres. It's slightly similar for the southern bridge, although the span or its length is 50 metres, whereas the width and the heights are relatively the same. So this is the ramp detail. Hopefully that's all clear there. So this is for both pedestrians and cyclists. And it's mainly constructed of steel composite, although the precise details will be something that is conditioned. The ramp gradient is 1 in 22, and that's been an acceptable gradient with statutory and non-statutory consultees in this regard. And this is the proposed stair detail. Excuse me. Again, it's a sort of a composite steel material. Those details will be required to be provided in detail as a condition. There's staircases for both the northern and southern bridge, sort of located sort of within the wider landscaping as well. We'll get onto that shortly. And this is the proposed lift in terms of its detail. So in terms of the height of the lift, so I believe the northern lift reaches a height of around about 10.5 metres, whereas the southern lift gets to a height of around about 12 metres in its full height. In terms of the precise details of the lift, that will be conditioned, but the external would be greened, so it does sort of soften its appearance slightly. So this just gives an idea of the cross-section of the bridge in its entirety, and this is for the northern bridge. As you can see here, so this is the view looking north. So you can see here the lift structure, the ramp detail as it comes round, and the staircase detail just at the back there. And as I say, this the bridge itself will be fully landscaped. On the image on the right-hand side with the block plan, you can see there that the proposed landscaping and how that sort of is intertwined, I guess, within the bridge structure, certainly with the ramps off. So it creates a softening of that appearance as opposed to trying to sort of hide the structure in any way. Again, just looking at the landscaping elements of the bridge. You can see there the northern image there, also the top image, just shows indicatively what the landscaping could appear to be like. And there's a CGI image to the south there. Landscaping on the bridge is quite a feature of the bridge, and it does sort of emphasise its appearance in design terms, and also does assist in terms of its biodiversity net gain. Again, looking at the wider sort of landscaping elements of the northern bridge, you can see here the additional landscaping, although there is a loss of trees within as part of the development, and certainly as part of the ramps, there will be additional planting or tree planting and other landscape features that forms part of this development. I would also say, in terms of the approved realignment of the A1301, the existing alignment does run sort of where that, I guess, where my cursor is. So actually, there's only a small part of the development, which you would see some of that sort of tree removal. So there's a lot of additional landscaping that would come forward, and this then would be the realigned A1301, which the bridges would sit upon. Similarly, this is the southern bridge and its sort of interaction, I guess, with the existing campus buildings to that point. The top image there is looking north. So you can see here we have the lift structure and the staircase, and then the image to the bottom just shows the ramp detailing, just all collectively. And the image on the right hand side is therefore just showing again the additional landscaping that would come forward as part of that proposal. So again, this is sort of showing the landscaping elements of that of the ramps off and how that sort of interacts with the southern bridge structure itself. I thought it'd just be helpful to sort of identify some of the wider benefits in terms of biodiversity net gain, but also the other aspects of landscaping. So as you can see there is 57% in biodiversity net gain. Although there is a removal of a number of trees, there will be a significant addition in terms of tree and other landscaping planting as part of this proposal. The planting upon the bridge decks will be drought resistant, which is quite a benefit. And as mentioned earlier, there will be sort of the greening of the lift structures in terms of use of climbers and on the serpentine wall. So I think it's just helpful just to look at the movement, or the anticipated movement for the bridges. As you see for the left-hand side, there is to be around 3,000 excuse me, new residents as part of the wider expansion land which will come forward, as well as 7,000 workers, but also there will be visitors and delegates to the existing conferencing facility, which needs to be taken into account in terms of the amount of people that would be using certainly the northern and southern bridge. And I think it's important to sort of highlight, as I say, this interaction or connectivity to what will be the proposed development, but also the existing development or existing facilities that are identified as part of the northern and southern sort of separation, which you get from, let's say, the proposed green, but also the sort of the existing greening, or the existing green areas that sort of separates the events and accommodation area to the sort of southern research facilities. So this just identifies sort of I guess, some of the relationship between, say, the existing village of Hingston and the Northern Bridge, and that sort of access strategy. As part of the outline plan permission, there's a requirement under condition to open up access or public access to the campus. So as part of that, you'll see some of the movement which will go through the site from the existing village, whether it's a new footpath or existing footpaths which then link into the existing facilities, such as the conference centre, or the leisure facilities which will be located near to the Northern Bridge. And I think it's just understanding, excuse me there, that distance between the Northern Bridge and the village of Hingston. There is some distance to the nearest dwelling, certainly within Hingston, of around, as I say, it's sort of on the plan there, around 220 metres. So there's a good separation distance between the village and, as I say, the proposed development. It also reiterates that we do have the A1301 realignment reserve matters approved, which proposes that northern and southern roundabouts, with the northern roundabout being quite substantial and quite an urbanising feature. So I think this image just helps sort of understand some of that context around how, say, New Road and the village of Hingston sort of interacts with, say, the Northern Bridge, but also some of the aspects to do with the Southern Bridge as well. Certainly there's a change in appearance because of the realignment of the A1301 works, which makes it more urbanising to some extent. And I'll just show you some of the images it's a bit closer up. Excuse me. So you can see here that this northern photo, so that's the existing arrangement, which is at the junction of North Road and the A1301. So that's looking south. And to the south here, the image to the bottom, the CGI image shows how the realignment of the A1301 sort of moves the existing road away from certainly the junction and the existing fence line, if you like, which is sort of demarcated by the new serpentine wall. So there's a shift away again from the existing road. And then you have the new roundabout, which I've just sort of highlighted there on my cursor. And then in the distance, you will see the Northern Bridge. Similarly for this image on the top there, this photograph, which I'll just show you as a separate CGI. Again, you'll see that the road has moved away from the existing junction and creating effectively a new junction. And you get this sort of long view. So you have the roundabout, the new roundabout here, and then you'll see the Northern Bridge and some of that ramp detailing, as well as the new serpentine wall, which feeds through all the way down to the Southern Bridge. So this just gives a bird's eye view, and it's a CGI image of what the Northern Bridge would appear like. Again, just reiterating, this is the approved roundabout as part of the realignment of the A1301. This is the proposed developments that will come forward in due course as part of the expansion land. We have the bridge deck, which is landscaped, the ramp detailing. You can see there my cursor, that's the lift detail, and then the associated landscaping as well, some of which is existing, some of which will be proposed, and that will feed all the way down to the Southern Bridge. Sorry, this is Northern Bridge still, sorry. So this images, these CGI images, relates to the Southern Bridge. You can see there is the East Lodge, which is part of the Hingston estate. So there is a relationship between the East Lodge and obviously the bridge ramp off, including the staircase. And you can see there's the image showing the Southern Bridge. Actually, I think that's looking north rather than south. Again, you can sort of see on the extremities the lift detailing, but also the landscaping detailing as well on the bridge deck. It's important to understand also the context of the lighting strategy and how it appears at night. As you can see here, the bridge deck and also the bridge ramps but also the lift detailing. The lighting is quite soft and understated. I appreciate there is these street lamps, but they're associated with the A1301 upgrade works, and as part of that reserve matters application and not part of this application. So the lighting is solely focused on the bridges and the, I'd say the ramps off. And just turning to the other elements of the development, the proposed serpentine wall, as you can see here, this runs the entire length, say from pretty much the southern bridge to the northern bridge and just beyond and linking up to North Road. The serpentine wall is made up of various materials and varies in heights and sort of intertwines, as you can sort of see, sort of demonstrated within this the image below. It intertwines in between proposed and existing landscaping to give a sort of a varied appearance. Again, sort of using various materials, and where it does sort of interact, say with the East Lodge, that will use a sort of traditional material, walled material. Okay, so again, this is sort of some of the serpentine detailing, and again, sort of the CGI images and sort of how that interacts with certainly the bridges. And this is the central access point, which would then cross the A1301. So again, just giving a bit of variety to the serpentine wall. Again, these are just CGI images showing the traditional sort of walling that comes against, say, East Lodge and some of the other serpentine wall details. So that's the presentation, and the officer recommendation is for approval, and in accordance with the conditions set out in section 12 of the report and the amendments set out also. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tipping, for that very comprehensive presentation. That last slide there on the planning balance, I may ask you to keep that handy in case that is useful to us during the debate later on. Now, we have a number of speakers. Before we come to that, are there any questions of clarification for Mr. Tipping? I should explain that when it comes to our speakers, I would not expect members to be asking questions of our speakers unless that is essential clarification of what they have said, rather than expansion of what they might have said. Councillor Wilson, I think, is first, is that right? Yeah.
Thank you. On paragraph 17 on page 8 of our pack, the second line says that the proposals are broadly in line with the outline planning permission. Could you explain that, please?
Yes, thank you, Member. Yes, so the parameter plans identify, as I say, several crossing points. Just when we look at those, the amalgamated parameter plan. So there were a number of assessments made in terms of what the crossing point should be as part of the outline plan permission. And some of that assessment was made whether it should be at-grade crossings or indeed bridges. So the crossing points refer to informal and formal crossing points. But where the locations are for the northern and southern bridge, they do relate to those identified crossing points. So they, in my view, they are sort of broadly in line.
So they don't go outside the perimeter of the outline planning permission then?
Not in that sense, no.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Tipping, some but not all of your CGIs seem to show seating on the top of the bridge. Can you confirm if there is seating planned? And if so, is there sufficient space for cyclists and pedestrians to pass safely?
Yes, thank you. Yes, there is seating, and it's identified along the entire length of the deck, of the bridge deck. So I think just going back to the width of the bridge, it does vary. As I say, it's its narrowest point, it's 6 metres to 10 metres. So there's sufficient width for both, say, pedestrians and cyclists. Thank you.
Councillor Bradley.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Tipping, thank you for your very full presentation. I just wanted to ask the cross-section of the bridges, two things. One was, is the North Bridge the same cross-section of the South Bridge? And secondly, I can't see in the conditions any long-term condition for maintenance of the planting along beside, on the edges of what is illustrated on the Southern Bridge, because that looks quite complicated.
Thank you. Yes, in terms of the cross-section for the bridge, that's an initial image that I showed. It's reflective for both bridges, essentially. In terms of long-term maintenance, there is a requirement for, and I just need to check my conditions again, apologies.
Long-term maintenance for sustainable drainage, but I couldn't see anything about the maintenance of planting on the bridge. It's possible that that might come under the...
Yes, sorry, condition 10 relates to sort of the landscaping.
That's to do with replacement.
With
It's not
replacement,
to do with long-term maintenance of the planting across the bridge.
Yes. Just one moment there.
Sorry, the reason I ask that is because in strong wind events, for example, if the trees had become too tall, they could blow in the wind and then fall onto the A1301. Worst case scenario. But I'm just wondering, is there a maintenance plan to maintain the height of those trees as proportionate to the amount of root security that they've got? Because you see where I'm driving. It would be foolish to have a very tall tree in a root pot that wasn't very deep, that then blew in the wind and fell over.
There are landscaping details associated with the bridge decks, and it's the specific landscaping schedule. When none of those, it doesn't identify the trees as such. All the trees tend to be located off the decks themselves, along the boundary.
Not,
so it's more
not
to do...
over the actual, sorry, not over the actual carriageway.
No, this is all related. It's more, there are some particular planting that gives height, I guess, but they're not sort of trees in that context.
Councillor Harvey.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I wonder if it could be clarified that the chronology of the quality panel report in relation to what we've been presented, because I noticed that the quality panel do sort of take issue with the planting along the bridge. So has that been sort of considered and declined as a recommendation, I wonder? And also, well, that's the first point. Second, they seem to be quite concerned about bad behaviour and a sort of what they described as sort of muddy tracks exit from the bridge. And I just wondered if you could explain where I couldn't really understand from the text what they were saying in relation to the muddy tracks. I wondered if you could point that out on the graphics that you have.
If I may interject, I wanted to also ask a question on that, and I think it relates to informal crossing. People not going over these bridges, just literally crossing at grade and ending up on the east side of the road and then walking up the side. But it's the same point that Councillor Harvey is making.
Sorry. Apologies. Can you just repeat those points again, just for reference?
Yes, of course. Well, first point was I wondered if the quality panel having taken issue with the planting, I think they would rather it was seen as a bridge rather than, I suppose there's a concern about the scale of the planting in relation to other natural features. So that's one thing. Has that been sort of considered and rejected in bringing forward the application as we've had it presented today? That was the first point. And then the quality panel also, Councillor Bradman just reiterated, seemed to have a concern about people not using the intended route, and I think at one point they were concerned that people would head off, presumably taking a shorter route, and create sort of muddy tracks. And I'm afraid I can't point to the exact paragraph, but I wondered what they were talking about there.
Yes, no, thank you for that. I think in terms of the first point, that yes, the quality panel comments in relation to planting on a bridge, there was some discussion around the sort of interaction between the existing campus and proposed the expansion land. And that has been discussed with also the landscape officer. And we came to view actually that the proposed planting is sufficient in terms of its appearance. And as I say, the planting schedule that's proposed is sufficiently detailed to give enough, I think that's sort of linking certainly between the existing campus land and the proposed campus on the expansion land. So yes, whilst it seems like it's we sort of negated those particular comments, we're sort of trying to structure them in, but in incorporating, as I say, the landscaping on the bridges is a feature, as explained earlier, and I think it's sufficient in terms of what it proposes, in my view. In terms of the second point, the serpentine wall will direct, because there are only certain breaks within the serpentine wall on the existing campus site. So you are directed within the existing footpath structure and proposed footpath structure to the bridges or at the at-grade crossing, the central at-grade crossing, which has been approved as part of the A1301. So I don't perceive there to be those sort of that reference to sort of muddy tracks in my view. I think there's sufficient footpaths and cycle paths that would suffice, and in my view that's sufficient. Yes.
Chairman, my question, I don't know if it's actually for Mr. Tibbin or for the applicants. So shall I wait, or do you wish me to ask it now?
Try both.
I'll go for it now. Okay, thank you. With regards,
assuming, of course, that you're not satisfied with the first answer.
Thank you. With regards to the ramp that on both bridges, but either one, I looked in on the agenda, and also I've looked at the plans. The ramp seems to me to be a straight, shall we call it, ramp without any rest areas for people who are mobility or problems or who are wheelchair users to use. Traditionally, the stairs has got rest areas, but the ramp doesn't. Now, that causes problems when you are a wheelchair user, because when you're going up, there's nowhere for you to stop unless you put the brakes on. So, is there rest areas on there? The rest areas are quite a common feature on these ramps. We have one in Papworth. We've had it there for 20 years. So, I can't see it on these ones. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for the question. There aren't any particular rest areas, as far as I'm aware, on that ramp, although there is the lift facility that provides that access for wheelchair users. We've also had this, certainly through the pre-application stage, discussed this with the access officer, and they've been sort of content with that ramp detailing. So I think the assumption would be that there would be more use of the lift. There would be obviously handrails as well as part of that, the ramp detailing.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that really doesn't cut the mustard. You should have rest areas. You have rest areas for people who have got normal access with regards to the stairs. You've got several, I've noticed, and therefore they should be on the ramp for people. Therefore, you're saying to people, if you're a wheelchair user, you have to use the lift or pull yourself up. That's just not good enough. They've been a design feature for the last 20 plus years. This one doesn't have them.
Perhaps in answering that, you would just deal with the question of whether there is flexibility, should the applicants wish, to build in such rest areas.
I guess there could be that flexibility within the ramp detailing. It's quite a long ramp, I guess, and it's a gradient which is, again, is sort of an acceptable gradient to 1 in 22. So it's a lot more achievable for more users, essentially.
Councillor Howell, I suspect that's a question you might want to come back to after the presentation by the...
Yeah, I'll wait until, yes. Thank you very much.
Councillor Bradnam, you wanted to come in again. Is this a separate issue?
It is, thank you. I wanted to ask if you would be so kind as to explain what is 1 in 22 in percentage terms. And second, is that 5%? Because I'm looking at gradients about what's suitable for cyclists, because it says in the quality panel document that the gradient looks challenging for cyclists. And the second point, following on from Councillor Howell, is on the Jane Coston Bridge over the A14 at Milton, it has a similar gradient, which is actually really rather steep, but it does have rest areas that are build-outs. So you can, even if you don't change the principle of the bridge, you can make a flat area and then go down and then another flat area on one side in the pedestrian bit, which is, that's the purpose of that, is to provide a rest area for wheelchair users. Just a thought.
Mr. Tipping, I think you've dealt with most of that, but do you have anything to add?
Nothing to add to that. I mean, like I say, I think the ramp detailing has been worked through with, as I say, the access officer, and we've had other statutory, non-statutory consultative responses in relation to it, which sort of accepts the ramp detailing. But no, I take the points on board. In terms of the 1 in 22 gradients, yes, I'm not entirely sure what that is in percentage terms, so I can certainly find out for you.
Well,
4.5. 4.5.
4.5.
degrees.
Thank you. Members, I said that we would take a break at 11 o'clock. We have 2 speakers and indeed the local member to speak to us on this one, and therefore I suggest we take a short break now. I was planning to use it to work out what 1 in 22 was, but we've hopefully had the answer to that, so I won't need to do that. So if we come back at 11:05, if we may. Right, we are live again. Welcome back to this meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council Planning Committee. We're on item 5, Hinxton, Land Welcome Genome Campus. So that concludes the officer presentation, and we now have some public speakers. And I welcome Nigel Hugill, who I don't think I need to give any guidance as to how the system works. You will understand that you have 3 minutes, and I would be most grateful if you could keep to time. The floor is yours. You may want to just press the button on your microphone.
Thank you very much indeed. And just before we start, we will confirm with the officer and with the technical office, but there are landing areas. To your point, I think it's not clear on the drawings, so I think we need to just take that away and confirm that for you. So if I could start, thank you, and good morning to all committee members. It's been my privilege to oversee the development of some of the most successful new places in England over the last 25 years, including notably Stratford City, which formed the basis of the 2012 Olympic Games. In all cases, one starts with the fundamentals, recognising logical desire lines, prioritising access and accessibility, establishing gentle and unobtrusive changes to ground levels, emphasising pedestrian and cycling amenity. These are the basics of good placemaking to be addressed before a single foundation is poured. When last before this committee in May, to which you referred, Chair, and previously over a 2-day session with the Quality Design Review Panel, who note specifically endorsed the two-bridge strategy, we reiterated the joint determination of Urban and Civic and Welcome to achieve global excellence. The Genome Campus at Hinxton is set against major research centres elsewhere in the world. We simply can't afford muddled thinking. The report and this morning's presentation and the recommendation are fully clear. I want only to reinforce 2 aspects. First, to Councillor Wilson's question, the outline planning permission did not fully resolve the rather tricky issue of the best way to connect the 2 sides of the campus. Having worked with your officers and with those from the county, we are now bringing forward a fully complete solution through this application. There is no argument that a single bridge, there's no argument that bridging is very obviously the safest option. The contention from Hinxton Parish is that a single bridge could work just as well. It would not. The 4 other local and larger parishes with whom we also regularly consult have not objected, and I do not believe that future generations of Hinxton residents would thank us for effectively encouraging resort to the crossing of a busy road. Second, there are many developers who would actively leap at the prospect of losing a costly bridge with a consequent upfront infrastructure savings. Believe me, if we could manage with one bridge, we absolutely would. A moment's reflection brings to mind the inherent short-sightedness of that approach. The Hinxton campus will come to host an estimated 10,000 employees and residents, as we've heard, plus the visitors to the conference centre. Highly qualified scientists, many will be, but they are also humans forever tempted to take the shortest route between 2 points. An absolute preoccupation of ours is the fostering of serendipity and inter-organisational cooperation, the collaboration of fine minds. There would not be much chance of that whilst running a gauntlet across the traffic of the A1301. So far from constituting an architectural indulgence, the two-bridge strategy is part of a bedrock of thoughtful and careful master planning being progressed with your officers, as you've heard, endorsed externally by the Design Review Panel and delivered by Wilkinson Eyre, one of the foremost designers of bridges in the world. Meticulously planned design lines.
Could I ask you to draw your remarks?
Yes, I'm within 15 seconds, Chair. Meticulously planned design lines are axiomatic to that strategy, facilitating movement across a consciously integrated campus with maximum consequent utilisation, maximum amenity, and above all, maximum safety. A single above-road crossing could not feasibly achieve the same outcomes. Two bridges, sir, that is what is required. I commend this application to you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. bearing in mind what I said earlier, do any members have any questions? Councillor Eileen Wilson first.
Thank you. Through you, Chair. I'm wondering, will this be a shared path for pedestrians and cyclists, or will there be a separation between the two? I know if you're looking at a number of crossings and also school children using this path, is it a good idea for the cyclists and pedestrians to be mixed, or should there be a separation?
They're wide enough for both, and there'll be cyclist calming measures in place to ensure that cyclists are not going fast.
Yes, I would like to give the gentleman the opportunity to explain about landing areas.
Would you like to pass that to me?
I might pass that over to some of my technical help, sir.
Good morning, committee. Julia Foster from David Locke Associates, the planning consultants for the application. It is not entirely clear on all of the plans that I concede. If you want to find the detail, on page 53 of the design and access statement, you'll see an explanation of the approach to inclusivity. So we are not required to put landing areas on a bridge that at this gradient it is shallow enough not to require them, but we have done so in any case. So you'll find on both bridges that there are landing points which will allow for rest, and that is identified on a plan on page 53 of the design and access statement, and is clear on one of the levels. Effectively, when you look at all of the other plans, you'll see they're segmented. One of those segments is level, so people can stop.
Thank you, Gemma.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you. I just wanted to draw your attention to the, I'm sure you're familiar with it, the quality panels report. And it says, it was noted there was only one footway along the A1301, but that muddy tracks, this is the point that Councillor Harvey was making, could emerge on the other side of the carriageway because human nature does not always follow intended routes. And later on in the next paragraph, it refers to whether at-grade paths to and around the roundabouts had been considered. And so I think my question is the purpose of the serpentine wall to actually stop those informal at-grade crossings over the A1301 so that you don't get pedestrians just crossing at grade? And do you think there is any risk of people not going over your lovely bridges, but actually just going straight across the 1301?
So it is a purpose of that wall. The quality design review panel those comments were more in relation to whether or not we should put some further pedestrian walkways at grade level. That was what they were worried about in relation to their muddy track, the now famous muddy tracks comment. It was whether or not we should put in some additional pavement.
And have you?
We're not proposing to, because of the fact it just encourages, it would encourage at-grade crossings, which we're very determined to do our best to stop for the obvious reasons.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And through you, on page 51 of our agenda item, right at the top, there's the question, will there be walking maps available to future users to show the various routes in and around the site, bearing in mind the discussions we've just had? Thank you.
Absolutely, there will. And one of the key considerations for us is the various different users. And part of the reason for the strategy as we have it is to make it very intuitive, for example, most particularly for visitors to the conferences. We're very conscious of the fact that there's a combination here of residents and scientists who work on the site in the normal course, but also considerable international and national visitors. And so as well as the maps, we start from the point before that, which is to make sure that everything is very intuitive. There are maps available for the Barbican, but I challenge anybody to find their way through it in the first instance. So we're very conscious of that. It goes back to that, starting with the fundamentals of getting the desire lines straight.
Mr. Hugo, thank you. Oh, I'm sorry, we have one more question for you from Councillor Eileen Wilson.
Sorry, my apologies. This is a supplement to my earlier question. I was wondering, have you consulted with any cycling campaigns like the Cambridge Cycling Campaign about the shared use? Because this does worry me. I've seen it come up before where I know that cyclists don't like mingling with pedestrians, but mainly for the risk to the pedestrians.
I'll interject again. Yes, CamCycle have been closely involved in developing this application and consulted. You can delve into the big pile of consultee responses and find their position. For fast cycling, for commuter cycling, there is always a preference for segregated routes, but we're very deliberately taking a view here that this is a campus community. These are people working and living on site, and this is localised movement essentially within the site, and for it to be shared is beneficial to slow everyone down. We've got very generous, wide corridor across the bridges, so it's not that we're dealing with a tight space. There are segregated routes onward from the bridge and through the site to allow cyclists to be separated from pedestrians if they wish to be, but this is a relatively small site to be dealing with this, and having an over-engineered solution to lots of segregated routes everywhere was not the preferred approach for the county, the district, or indeed for us as the applicant.
Right, I'm going to draw a close there. Mr. Hugo, thank you very much for your presentation, and to you and your colleagues for the comprehensive answers to questions. I'm now going to move on to the Parish Council. I'm very glad to see Councillor Sam Nichols in person. Councillor Nichols, are you proposing to refer some of the questions to your colleague, or will you be dealing with any questions yourself?
We'll deal with them together, thank you.
Okay, that's fine. You will have heard me say earlier you'll have 3 minutes. Can I just ask you a question I have to ask you, whether you have the formal consent of your parish council to present on their behalf?
Yes, confirm.
Thank you. Okay. Yes. If you agree some sort of a signal, if you just wave at Lawrence here, then he will move it forward. Right. The floor is yours.
Okay. First slide, please. Morning, everybody. We would say that James Tipping's presentation this morning didn't address two key issues. One is movement. It didn't explain the movement of peoples between the expansion land, the campus, and the village. Second, it didn't explain why two bridges are really necessary and not one. From the village's perspective, we have 5 key objections. Objection 1, Urban and Civic made the application without any further engagement with the village as previously promised. Objection 2, there's no need for 2 bridges. They're motorway sized, they're not on the outline permission. Objection 3, the bridges are significant over-engineered structures which do detract from the rural character of the village. Objection 4, the Northern Bridge is too close to the village. It's close to New Road, Hingston Hall and the Hingston Church. They're both listed. Objection 5, the bridge positions don't reflect the likely pattern of movement to and from Hingston to the expansion area. Slide, please. Urban and Civic made this application without any real engagement with Hingston Village. Slide, please. We say that's a repeated pattern of behaviour. The same process took place in relation to the A1301 upgrades in August 22. Urban and Civic have a track record of presenting their developed design to the village on the cusp of the planning application with no real intention of making adjustments. Slide, please. The bridges are significant over-engineered structures. They do detract from the rural character of the village. They're motorway-sized bridges. They're over-engineered, urban-type structures that are being introduced into an essentially rural landscape, city and the countryside. The feature lighting on the bridges is also visually intrusive to the village. Slide, please. Picture of the Northern Bridge, too close to the village. Slide, please. There are incorrect assumptions about movement patterns. If you look at the drawing there, the marker mark B shows the at-grade crossing leaving New Road, Hingston, north of the Northern Roundabout. is much quicker to cross the road there than it is to walk another 130 metres south to get onto the Northern Bridge marked A. You would just walk across the road. Slide, please. Shows that grade crossing on the Northern Roundabout again. We say you would cross at point A and not across the bridge. Slide, please. Urban and Civic say that pedestrians and cyclists will rely on the Northern Bridge to get to the school if it's built. That's not within their discretion, of course. We say that's not right. We say the vast majority will neither use the bridge nor the DA1 crossing. Rather, they will take the central path from the village across DA3, which is shown on their own drawing there to the north. Slide, please. Why do Urban and Civic dismiss a central bridge? We say a single central bridge is preferable, that it would soften the visual impact from the village, that it would create a more legible diagonal route through the campus and up the green spine of the development. We've shown it there marked pink. Slide, please. We're disappointed by the lack of consultation and engagement with the parish council on the bridges. We say they're over-engineered urban-type structures in a rural landscape. They're motorway-sized. They have feature lighting on them. There's no convincing evidence that the bridges need to be this large for the number of pedestrians and cyclists using them. They're not on the outline permission. The Northern Bridge is too close to the village, and if anything, a single central bridge would suffice.
Thank you for keeping your presentation exactly to time. I appreciate you had to hustle a bit to get through it, but we appreciate that. Do members have any questions? I see Councillor Bradnam has a question for you.
Thank you, Chair. And you're right, it was a very swift presentation, so swift that I could barely get my head around the diagrams and what we were looking at before you moved on. Not your fault. So can we go back?
Sure.
And look at what you considered to be the more desirable desire line that you described. And can we just get our heads around that? So the west side of that diagram is the Northern Roundabout.
Correct.
And Hinxton is off the bottom left-hand corner of that plan, is it not?
It is. The top of New Road is almost immediately.
But sorry, the reason I wanted to question that was because elsewhere you said you thought residents were more likely to cross on the, let's call it for the sake of argument, the left-hand side of the left-hand roundabout,
yes,
and go up that road to the left.
Yeah.
So why are you saying you want the one through the middle? I'm sort of can't quite understand the logic behind that.
Well, because Urban and Civic say they need a bridge crossing to facilitate their movement between the expansion land and the existing campus. We acknowledge that to a point, but we say that if you're looking at the relationship between the village and village movements and the campus areas, that actually when you come to the top of New Road, there is an at-grade crossing there, which Urban and Civic say little about. But the practical reality is, when you come to the top of the road, you're going to walk across the road. It's another 130 metres to get to that Northern Bridge. So why would you walk another 130 metres south to cross the bridge when you don't need to? The practical reality is you would just walk across the road. And if I could show you the next slide, I think it was. Yeah.
Sorry, on your plan,
Yeah.
you showed people crossing at A, which is, looking at this, it's the left-hand leg.
Yeah.
No, yes, that's right.
Yeah.
It's the left-hand leg of the left-hand roundabout, and Hinxton is further left and down to the south.
Yes.
So to go up the road, which is off the right leg of that roundabout. So I'm assuming you meant that people would go off the road northbound from the point A on that diagram. And if we can go back to the previous plan, thank you. So in other words, off the left-hand side of this diagram and up to the school at the top. So I'm just trying to work out why.
Well, there are two things. There is the use of the at-grade crossing north of the Northern Roundabout there to the left on that slide. And then there was a secondary point which related to the use of the school. And of course, the school is not a given. It's subject to the consent of the Education Authority. But what we say in relation to the school is that if you were walking to the school specifically, which would be, you can just see in the top left corner of that drawing, I think, the white blob in the top left corner, just slightly to the right of the cursor now. that actually you wouldn't use either the at-grade crossing there or the northerly bridge. What you would in fact do is you would take the footpath across DA3, across the northern expansion land, which is immediately opposite the village. And we showed that, if I could go back to that slide. It's slide number, right, I'll get it for you. It was slide number 9, please. This one, yeah. So you can see, this is Urban and Civic's own drawing. So you can see the footpath that runs to the north there, immediately across DA3, which is much more convenient if you're going to the school. You're not going to walk all the way south through the village, down New Road, down through the campus, across the bridge, back up in a northerly direction to get to the school. You simply wouldn't.
Or does that answer your question?
Sort of, yes, thank you.
Good, thank you. Now, thank you very much for answering those questions so thoroughly and for your presentation. I appreciate that in this sort of situation, various people might want a chance to respond to that, but that will come during the debate, which is to follow. So I'm now going to move on to, I'm going to call him the local member. It is within his ward. I appreciate that other parishes are also affected by this, but for this purpose, the local member is Councillor Peter MacDonald, who's been following us online. We ask local members to stick to 3 minutes, but it's not obligatory. Councillor MacDonald.
Thank you, Chair, and I'll do my very best to stick to the 3 minutes. Could you just confirm that you can hear me okay?
We can indeed.
Great, and thanks to Lawrence for sending me the link. First of all, members, I'm sorry I'm not joining you in person this morning, just having arrived back from holiday and some business commitments. As a local member for one of the biggest single developments in South Cambridgeshire, I do wish to acknowledge some of the points made by Urban and Civic and the campus, but also importantly points from Hingston Parish Council. Let's remember that the residents there will be living with the development of the campus for the next 10 years. To its credit, I think Urban and Civic have expressed a willingness to work with the community, but this hasn't always been timely, with inputs generally just before the submission of the plans, and I think this was referred to. I think the designs on the A1301 landscaping, the massive tree removal programme and replanting, water management, are all to the credit of the campus and Urban and Civic. But with 1,500 dwellings on the site and up to 7,000 people moving across, naturally there has to be an effective way to get from the campus to the existing site and vice versa, which doesn't involve cars. The two bridges do seem rather ambitious given their size and impact. Hingston is a typical picturesque South Cambridgeshire village, and having two massive constructions over the 1301 on its doorstep will, I believe, detract from the objective of harmonising the look and feel of the new campus with the surroundings. The bridges require, of course, HGV clearance, and so by necessity, the northern bridge, I think, will have to be 10.5 metres high, and the southern bridge something like 12 metres. The campus and Urban and Civic assert that people will use the northern bridge, but as we've heard from the parish council, I think human nature will be to look for the shortest route and an at-grade crossing. So there is a risk that this bridge, the northern bridge, becomes a steel white elephant. In terms of design, we always wanted to avoid the city and the countryside, and there are surely many examples where such construction has not distracted from the neighbourhood, but added to it. So overall, it seems to be excellent work undertaken by the campus on the A1301 and the serpentine design. But my feeling is somewhat similar to the parish council, that excellent work and the design and the appearance of the bridges does not match the excellent work that has been taken place elsewhere. Therefore, I'd like to respectfully ask for a reconsideration of the need for the two bridges and the design of those bridges. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor MacDonald. I'm not proposing to take any questions to Councillor MacDonald because we will now progress to the debate on this. Right. So the question before us is as set out in your papers. You've heard presentations from the case officer, from the developers and from the parish council. The local member has, if you like, led off the debate on this. who would like to follow him? Councillor Bradman.
Thank you, Chair. Right, so I've been aware of this development as it's gone through, and I've seen the amount of advice we've been given as members of Planning Committee about it as it's evolved. And I've been impressed by the amount of work that Urban and Civic have done in order to make it as acceptable as possible. But I have to say, I was quite startled by some aspects of this, and particularly by the massing of engineering structures over the road, when actually the Genome campus has done a really good job of hiding itself from the public up to now. I mean, there are some stunning buildings on the site, but you're not really aware of them so much from the road because there's excellent screening. I absolutely understand the need to get people safely from one side of the road to the other, particularly with the development of the new residential area, which is so important to the site. But I am slightly startled by the appearance of the bridges, and it does feel much more industrial than I had sort of anticipated. And so, given that on the west side of the A1301, currently the campus has excellent car parking underground, and that's why it works quite a lot. I do wonder whether any consideration was given to underpasses rather than bridges, because it's they are very obtrusive. I think excellent work has gone into the design and to try and make it as appealing as possible, but you can't get away from the fact that they are a very big obstruction in the view. And so I'm uncertain how I'm going to vote on this at the moment, but I'm sort of wondering whether any thought was given to underpasses, because I think that might have solved, I mean, even for one of them.
Thank you, Councillor Bradnam.
Yeah.
I just emphasise we will be considering the application which is before us today.
Yes,
and
but
that's why I've asked the case officer to put the planning balance up on the screen so that we can focus on the issues raised in that.
Can I ask though, Chair, in the preparation work for this, and maybe of the case officer, what were underpasses considered at any point, or was it always bridges?
Well, before the case officer deals with that, let me be clear. The proposal before us is for bridges, and therefore the question of whether underpasses were or were not considered is not an issue for us to decide today. However, if the case officer wants to make a brief comment on that, I'm happy for him to do so.
Thank you, Chair. Happy to do that. Yes, as part of the consideration, part of the assessment that the applicant has made, they did consider underpasses as well as a tunnel under the length of the A1301 as well as the other options of at-grade crossings and obviously the bridges themselves. So they were assessed collectively, and a lot of that came down to costs in terms of providing such elements. But yes, they were considered, but this is the proposal that's come forward.
Thank you very much, Chair.
I emphasise that we are in the debate now. Does any other member have any views on the issues before us? I think Councillor Wilson.
Thank you. Yes, I agree. A lot of work has gone into this, and they do look very. There's a lot of thought and planning gone into those bridges and the access to the bridges. But I'm very concerned by the fact that Hingston Parish Council feel that there was no proper consultation. And also, we've heard that from the local member. So I wonder whether if that more consultation had been taken place and it had been more timely, whether there would be more agreement between the parish council and the developers.
I don't think that's a matter which anyone can answer. I would just stress that, as I mentioned earlier, the detailed members' briefing that we had on 19th of May was open to the public, and that was a presentation broadly of these proposals.
I wasn't...
Yeah. Appreciate that. So, these are the matters before us. Does anyone else take a strong view for or against the officer recommendation? Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I've listened to all of the submissions with great interest, and sort of changed my mind several times during the course of the meeting. Having heard the parish council and the local member, I do have sympathy with what they're saying in terms of the need for two bridges at either end of the campus. The bulk of the campus, to my mind, seems to be towards the south to that first roundabout. So a central crossing would probably take the bulk of traffic between the two sides of the campus. There is, I think, Mulberry Court and Willow Court at the top in the northern end. So I do have sympathy about that northern bridge, and I think that there's a good point that most people will probably cross at the level of the road if they are, certainly if they're going to Hingston, raising a question about the need for that. But really, this is going to turn into a question for clarification, really, because whilst I can see all of these arguments, what I'm struggling to do is map those onto planning reasons. So what is the departure from the outline planning permission here? I'm not entirely clear as to what the departure is, if there is a departure from the outline.
I'm not proposing to refer that to the case officer because I think it is clearly set out in the papers. That's, of course, if I can find the point in the papers, that the question of access was not determined in the full planning application. It is to be determined later by this committee in consultation with Cambridgeshire County Council.
Yes, thank you, Joe. I did say, but there was a response earlier to Councillor Bradnam that raised a question mark in my mind, where I think Councillor Bradnam, or I think maybe Councillor Wilson, flagged up a paragraph, I think it was 1.7, where it said it was largely, broadly. And that then raised a question in my mind as to whether there was something that was not clear to me from reading the report.
That question, Councillor Williams, was raised earlier on, and I'm afraid I'm going to leave it to members to make up their own mind on that point in the light of the information we have received and the answers to that point earlier. If you'll forgive me, Councillor Bill Handley.
I hope I'm not being naive here in that I cannot believe that an organisation like the Wellcome Trust and Urban and Civic would build two bridges unless they felt there was a need for two bridges. That the plans they have going forward are for substantially more people, and that movements are going to need two bridges. That's my feeling. I actually think that it boils down to whether or not you think the design of the bridges, you know, I think actually going to be quite striking. Now, that's obviously going to be something that some people, presumably residents in Hingston, would say, yes, that's a bad thing, but some others would say, actually, it's in line with, you know, the Wellcome Institute and the Cambridge, the nature of the Cambridge area and the biotech industry. So I'm, at the moment, inclined to vote in favour of this because I think the officer's arguments and the planning balance suggest to me that that's the right thing to do.
Do we have any other speakers for the first time? I think Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. though I wasn't at the briefing back in May, I actually watched it back just so I could have a better understanding of the proposal before us. And looking at the balance that's before us and all the information that I've heard today, it seems to me that this is something that we need to be looking at as what is required for the future of the expansion that Welcome is proposing. It might not seem on the face of it to fit in with what is there currently, but this is where we need to be looking at what is before us and what is coming. And the fact that, they put this together to confirm the feelings that Councillor Handley has expressed is that it is required. Let's not forget the quality panel that they've taken this to also have agreed with the principle of the two bridges. So, in my view, looking at what we've got in front of us, I will be voting for this. Thank you.
Councillor Sanford, I think you wanted to comment on this.
Thank you, Chair. One, I have a lot of sympathy with the residents of Hinxton, the impact on their amenity. We have to be realistic. We're talking of a planned new town that will house 1,500 people and have 10,000 people working on the side. It's inevitably going to have some impact on the rural character, probably quite a lot. I hear what Urban and Civic has said, that they wouldn't propose spending money building two bridges if one would suffice. So I think we have to reluctantly accept the application and hope the developers will mitigate any impact to the visual amenity of the area.
Well, I think, Councillor Jeff Harvey, and then I will come back to Councillor Anne Bradnam after that.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not sure I can add so much that is new to what's already been said, but it does seem to me that we have to see this in the context of the development that is coming forward, whether there's one bridge or two, and that's quite a significant development, and therefore I feel that one should be trying to make that new development work as well as we possibly could. And I do think that almost from a psychological point of view that the better the two halves of the expanded campus can be made to work together, the more successful it will be as a development, given the development will happen anyway. And the attention that has been given to this choice, I'm really tempted to agree that two bridges is the right solution.
Councillor Bradnam, I think you had a fresh point you wanted to make.
Yes, thank you. As the applicant said, they have given considerable thought, and it's referred to in the quality panel report, thought about routes, desire lines and destinations that people might want to go to. And the plans have been successfully safety audited, and there had been extensive consultation with the Highways Authority. And so the other thing is that we know, don't we, this is going to be a substantial development. It's a key development. We need to make sure it works because, and I remember in the past we were advised the decisions about who comes to work here are not about whether they're going to work here or somewhere else in the UK. It's here or Europe. So actually we've been extremely successful in attracting really high-class scientific research to this area. And through the planning process, we've tried to mitigate the impact of the development, and the developer themselves have done a lot of work to make their plans as innovative and as attractive and unusual and striking, but also as compatible with the environment of a research campus. as they possibly can. And I think whilst it's new, it's going to be a new thing over the A1301, but then the whole campus will be as well. And I'm mindful of the fact that I can see no material reason to object to this. So I'm liable to vote for it. Thank you.
Thank you, members. I think we are nearing the point when we should. Before we do that, I just want to highlight, it seems to me that the two key issues we have to make up our minds upon. One is, as set out on the screen, the potential harm to the rural character, which is obviously of concern to the Hingston Parish Council. Do we agree that limited weight should be given to that, given the nature of the development, which a number of members have just referred to, and the calculations clearly undertaken by the developers? The second one is, what is the best practical means of connecting not only two sides of this campus, but also the village to the new development? Do we accept what the parish council say, that it would be better to have a single bridge in the middle? Or do we accept the very detailed assessment, I think, from the developers about the importance of having very good connections between the two sides of this campus, so that informal conversations, which we've heard of in other sites of this nature, can easily take place without people taking risks in crossing the roads? As I think everyone has accepted, it would not be compulsory for anybody to use these bridges. Some may find other routes. But I think the question is, do we accept what Hingston Parish Council says, that most will go another way, I think principally from the village, or do we accept what the developers say about the importance of having these bridges to make sure people can make informal connections without putting themselves at risk on the increasingly busy road there? Those, I think, are the decisions before us. I now propose that we move to a vote. Councillor Timmy Hawkins, I think, may be seconding that. Thank you. So, I think we need to take this vote electronically. This is on your screens. As members will recall, you have to press the blue button first, and then either green if you accept and support the officer's recommendations, or whatever the other colour may be if you decide you don't want to support the officer's recommendations. I should clarify that if you oppose, it would be red, and if you wish to abstain, it would be yellow. So I think we have all voted. Can I ask? I think we So the outcome, I think, is that we are eight voted in favour, 1 abstained, and so that that is passed, and consent is granted for the application before us. Thank you, members. It's 11:49. I think it might be wise to take another 5-minute break before we start into the next item. Can I express my thanks not only to the officers involved, but to the developers and to the Hingston Parish Council for all the effort that's gone into the presentations this morning before us, which has helped us to take this decision. Thank you all. We'll reconvene at 11:55. Welcome back to this meeting of South Cambridgeshire District Council Planning Committee, including to any who are still following us live online, and I know that some will be speaking to us later remotely. So we now come to item 6. This is in relation to 73 High Street in Cottenham. It's a proposal for change of use of public house with flat and erection of a detached dwelling. The applicant is Gary Jackson. This is brought before us because of the parish council objected and asked that it be referred to the planning committee. The officer recommendation is to approve subject to the conditions, and the presenting officer online is Alice Young. Alice, welcome, we are with you.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just get the presentation up. So the application is at 73 High Street, Cottenham, the former Jolly Miller's pub, and it is for the change of use of the public house with flat at first floor to a dwelling, the demolition of existing outbuildings and annex, and the erection of a detached dwelling, creation of amenity space, bin storage, parking, and manoeuvring for 2 dwellings. Just a quick thing to bring members' attention to. In paragraph 1.2 of the committee report, I stated that the previous application at the address, application reference number 21/02117/FUL, went to planning committee on the 19th of January 2021. I mean to say 2022, so apologies about that. Since the publishing of the report, there's also been slight minor changes to the conditions. This is to change the trigger points of some of the conditions so that the conversion of the public house can take place before some elements are required to be submitted. I can go through those in a bit more detail if members are, want me to do so. So, the 73 High Street, Cottenham, the former Jolly Miller's pub, is located on the southeastern side of Cottenham High Street. The site comprises the public house, several outbuildings, and pub amenity lands to the southeast. The development framework boundary cuts through the site 38 metres from the front of the site beyond the existing outbuildings. The site also falls within the Cottenham Conservation Area, and there are 2 trees on site that are protected as they are in the conservation area but do not have TPO status. To the northeast of the site is Smith's Path, which leads to commercial and residential units to the southeast of the site. Aside from these commercial units, predominantly the site is surrounded by residential dwellings with large plots that extend beyond the development framework boundary, which contain barns, outbuildings, and some backland dwellings, specifically like number 71A just here. So the application seeks permission for the change of use of the existing pub with manager's flat to a single residential dwelling, the demolition of the existing outbuildings located here, and the erection of a detached dwelling and associated facilities such as parking, bins and bikes. The existing vehicular access will be retained and 2 parking spaces will be provided, 1 per dwelling within the site, and 2 other parking spaces can be provided out on the roadside. So this is the existing floor plan for the pub. You'll see that there's the bar at the ground floor, annex and store, and then at first floor there is an existing manager's flat. So the conversion would lead to minimal internal changes and the removal of the annex to the rear for a pub for the amenity space for the converted pub. So now we're going to have a look at the plans for the rear dwelling. So 2-storey, well, 1.5-storey, 2-bedroom, 4-person dwelling. Open plan living kitchen area to the rear. And these are the elevations. And this is the proposed dwelling within the context of the pub conversion and the removal of the annex structure here. So we'll see that the annex structure is set further back within the plot comparative to the proposed dwelling, is set back further than the existing annex. So there is planning history. The plans might look familiar. So a previous application, 2021 application, was refused at Planning Committee in 2022 for 3 reasons by members. One was the loss of the pub and the harm to the service provision in Cottenham. The second was harm to views out to the countryside and to the character and appearance of the conservation area. And the third was under provision of car parking and poor visibility from the site access, leading to highway safety concerns. The inspector obviously this went to appeal, and the inspector dismissed the appeal on the potential harm to protected species. The inspector concluded that the appeal development did not result in an unacceptable loss of service provision in Cottenham, harm to the character and appearance of the conservation area, or harm to the functioning of the highway due to an under-provision of car parking. The inspector did in fact conclude that the proposal did, however, have insufficient information to demonstrate that harm to protected species, mainly bats, would not arise from the development. So the revised application seeks to overcome the harm identified by the inspector through providing additional information regarding a nocturnal bat survey. The proposed development remains the same as the previous application aside from this additional ecological information. Therefore, the appeal decision carries significant weight when assessing the application. I just want to highlight the timeline of events since the previous application. So the Cottenham neighbourhood plan was made in May 2021. The previous planning application went to planning committee in January 2022. The appeal decision was May of this year, 2023, and then the revised scheme is obviously submitted since then. So there's been no policy change since the appeal decision. So the key material considerations today are the appeal decision and whether the harm identified by the inspector has been overcome by the additional information submitted. So the impact on protected species. So the inspector in the assessment of the previous application stated that while the bat roosting suitability was low for the building proposed to be demolished, that because the building has a moderate habitat links to the wider landscape, the inspector concluded there was insufficient information to demonstrate that the impacts on protected species would not arise from the development. So to overcome this harm, a preliminary roost assessment and a nocturnal bat survey has been submitted. The recommended, the nocturnal bat survey highlighted that no roosting bats were found. The ecology officer has advised that there is no reason to disagree with this analysis and confirms that they do not require any further species surveys to be submitted, and therefore officers have concluded that it has been demonstrated that there would be no harm to protected species and adequate mitigations are in place. So to conclude, officers conclude in line with the inspector's decision that there is less than substantial harm to the conservation area resulting from the loss of the pub through its activity. However, this is outweighed, as concluded by the inspector, by the public benefits that the development brings. The proposal would reuse an existing, currently vacant pub for housing, whilst ensuring efficient use of land by providing an additional dwelling, which would not result in significant harm to the settlement characteristics or the vitality and vibrancy of Cottenham Village. This was confirmed by the Inspectorate Appeal. The development is identical to the appeal scheme, aside from the additional ecological information to address the appeal decision. The inspector dismissed the appeal because there was insufficient information provided to demonstrate that no impact to protected species would arise. The applicant has submitted that additional information, and the ecology officer has no objections to the application and considers there is sufficient information and adequate mitigations in place to support the application and protect protected species. Therefore, officer's recommendation is one of approval subject to conditions. Thank you.
Thank you very much. The last slide that you referred to there, the planning balance, I will ask later on for that to go up again when we get to the debate. Meanwhile, just to remind you of what I said earlier on, whilst we do have some public speakers who will be addressing us virtually, I prefer that any questions of clarification be referred to case officers if possible. So if you have questions of clarification, now is the moment. Councillor Bradnam.
Thank you very much, Chair. I just wanted to ask on the highway matter, I don't know if this has changed, but certainly on Google imagery, just to the south side of the proposed vehicular access, there is a brick wall that appears quite high. And I just wondered, certainly in the report, there's no indication from highways that they're concerned about visibility. But I just wondered, what was the understanding about that visibility splay? Because it just looks like as you drive out, there's a brick wall and you would not be able to see if somebody was coming along the path. I just wondered what your understanding of that part of it was.
Thank you. In terms of the vehicular access, yes, there is a brick wall to the south that was present in the previous application. In terms of visibility displays, that's all been considered acceptable by the highway engineer, and the inspector did not raise any issues regarding visibility, and actually disagreed with the reason for refusal 3, which regarded visibility.
Thank you.
Councillor Dr. Toomey Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Thank you for the presentation. I think you said that the issue of the BAT survey, that there were conditions attached to this application to make sure that everything gets resolved properly. I can only find one condition 4. So what are the other conditions, unless there's just the one condition?
So there's one condition with regards to making sure that works are carried out in accordance with the submitted documentation. And then there's one condition with regards to biodiversity net gain. These are recommended by the ecology officer, there's also, sorry, there's also a condition securing biodiversity enhancement as well. And these are the 3 conditions the ecology officer recommended.
Sorry, can you be more specific about what those conditions are? I've said, I can see condition 4 refers to bat survey. What are the other conditions that are listed here? Just the condition number, that's all.
Okay, so as you have seen, condition 4 is to do with the bat survey. Condition number 19 is biodiversity enhancement. Condition 20 is biodiversity net gain.
Councillor Hawkins, are you happy that we accept the guidance on those conditions without actually putting the full wording up? Okay. Are the members happy with that? Councillor Eileen Wilson.
Thank you. I've noted that the Conservation Officer has mentioned that talks have been taking place to reinstate the pub sign. Is it possible for that to be made a condition? Because that does detract from the character of the High Street.
So originally that was a condition that we recommended as part of the previous application. And so I was in talks with the applicant about the feasibility of that condition in light of the passage of time since the pub sign was taken down. The pub sign has been taken down and is in disrepair. So there isn't a pub sign that is in good health to reinstate, hence why that condition is not being recommended. I have been in talks with the applicant and agent about potentially having a plaque talking about the previous use of the building as a pub and the historic kind of contribution it had to the conservation area. I haven't included a condition on that, but if members were minded to approve it, I'm sure that a condition could secure that.
Can I just say I would support that condition if it was possible.
Come back to that during the debate. Councillor Bradnam, I think you wanted to ask another question.
Yes, I had also been thinking about that, and I don't think it's appropriate to put up a pub sign because people will think it's a pub, and it's not. So actually, I support the plaque idea, which Councillor Wilson has raised.
Well, perhaps that's a point you may like to make during the debate later on. I have a question myself, which may be of a legal nature. As Young said, the appeal decision has to be given significant weight. And the inspector was very clear that the loss of the appeal of the building as a public house would not reduce community or service provision in Cottenham, that the public benefits of the proposal would outweigh the less than substantial harm to the significance of the conservation area, and that there's no conflict in terms of highway safety. Now, members may or may not agree with that assessment, and I wondered if the legal officer would like to comment on the weight to be given to the inspector's report in relation to those matters.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. The inspector's decision carries significant weight. He has made it very clear on his reasons for dismissing the appeal. He was not with you on the reasons for refusal, and it would be unwise to try and move on going back on his decision. So it would be unwise to make a decision based on a previous decision. And in those circumstances, should that happen, you would put the councillor at significant risk of cost because it would be considered unreasonable.
Right. And a second question from me, I'm afraid, is in relation to the neighbourhood plan, which, as Alice Young pointed out, was made in May 2021 before the application on which the inspector has ruled. But I raise this because, without wishing to anticipate what the parish council may be wishing to say, in their objection, they raise three possible conflicts between the neighbourhood plan and this application. And I'm just wondering, since that was not a matter taken up by the inspector, what weight we can give to that. It's rather difficult for you to answer without hearing what the parish council may say. So if you prefer, you might come back to it after, at a later stage.
Thank you. Can I, sorry, just to check. So the neighbourhood plan had not been made, and the inspector made a decision. It had been made when he made his decision, right?
Well, perhaps better if I leave Alice Young to remind us the chronology on that.
So the Cottenham plan, neighbourhood plan, was made in 2021 in May. The previous application went to planning committee and obviously was assessed against the planning policy at the time, which included Cottenham neighbourhood plan policies. The appeal decision was made in May of this year and against the Cottenham neighbourhood plan and local plan policies, and the revised plan is assessed against Cottenham neighbourhood plan and the local plan policies and other policies as well. So there has been no policy change since the appeal decision. I hope that's clear. I've got the timeline of events on screen now.
That's very helpful. In the light of that, would you like to come back to that issue later if it's relevant after we've heard from the parish council? Thank you. Councillor Bill Henley. No?
It's okay, Chair, thanks.
Right, well then let's move on to our public speakers. Oh, I beg your pardon. Councillor Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. Just to perhaps add a bit more information to your question on the neighbourhood plan. If we look on page 88 of our papers and paragraph 19 of the inspector's report, it does say, as such, there is no conflict with policies HQ1 and H2 and H14 of the local plan and policies COH1 to 2, COH1 to 4, and COH1 to 5 of the made Cottenham neighbourhood plan, which I think kind of clarifies. Yes.
So, the inspector has clearly taken the view there is no conflict.
Exactly.
Our legal advisor may wish to advise us further on that after we've heard from our public speakers, but I suggest that we're now in a position to move on to our public speakers. Starting with agent for the applicant, Stephen Barker of Barker Parry. Are you with us? Welcome, Mr. Parry. You have 3 minutes to present your case, and then if you would stand by, members may have some questions for you after that.
Thank you. Good morning, or good afternoon as it now is, and thank you for the opportunity to speak. My name is Stephen Barker. I'm a director and co-founder of Barker Parry Town Planning. I'm a chartered town planner who's been in practice now for over 40 years. I first visited the application premises in 2020 and have overseen the original application, the subsequent appeal, and this resubmission, a process which has taken a very long time. Planning, as you will all know, can be a lengthy and iterative process. The original application was, of course, recommended for approval, but was refused by committee. The appeal, although dismissed, upheld none of the reasons, but was critical of the ecological evidence relating to bats, as you've just heard from Alice Young. The inspector considered that as the building may possibly be attractive to bats, that surveys should be carried out. This single issue has now been resolved. The report before you is long and detailed, and the recommendation is one of unequivocal support subject to the imposition of appropriate conditions as now revised. There are just 3 matters which I should like to refer to. One is the proposed parking, something which I know preoccupied members in January 22. The second is the continued objection from CAMRA and the Parish Council, and the third relates to pub signage, which we've just spoken about. With regard to the 2 objectors, both parties, unlike your retained professionals, and I'm sure yourselves, have paid absolutely no regard to the recent appeal decision and have repeated what they had to say in 2021 and 2022. That is their prerogative, but I know that you understand that the appeal decision is an important material consideration which militates in favour of an approval. In particular, the inspector's conclusions regarding viability, the fairnage and vistas need to be weighed against the repeated observations from CAMRA and the Parish Council. On the matter of the neighbourhood plan, Councillor Dr Hawkins has very usefully pointed to paragraph 19 in the inspector's report, where of course he refers to the fact that the plan is made and he did have regard to the policies therein. On the matter of parking, this has probably caused the applicant the most distress. Previously, the Highways Department at the County Council would only withdraw its objection if on-site parking was reduced from 2 to 1 per dwelling. Your officers felt obliged to support the County Council and would only recommend favourably to you with this amendment. You overturned the recommendation on this point and, of course, others. The inspector, however, upheld none of the objections, parking included, based on his assessment of the historic use of the premises, the highway
Barker,
conditions.
can I ask you to draw your remarks to a conclusion, please?
Yes, you can indeed. He was perfectly content with the arrangements, despite being offered the option of 4 car parking spaces. On the matter of the pub sign, there have been useful comments from members. The applicant is amenable to some kind of information board being displayed on the street side of the premises, if that is your wish. Thank you very much for your time. I'm sorry if I've overrun. I hope you will accept the recommendation before you and approve the application. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Barker. I'm conscious that there may be 1 or 2 questions from members. I think not. So thank you for your time, and we'll now move on to the Parish Council. I think Councillor Tim Jones, Cottonham Parish Council, is with us online.
Yes, I am.
Welcome, Mr. Jones.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon. Just before you start, can I just ask you to confirm that you have the agreement of your Parish Council to speak on their behalf on this matter?
I can confirm, yeah.
Thank you for that. So the floor is yours. You have, as I said earlier, 3 minutes.
Okay, no, thank you very much for that, and thank you for preempting my arguments, Councillor Fane. Yeah, and I think it is probably pretty much as you might expect us to say, and our main issues are laid out in our response that's included in the officer's report. It's very helpful. I would like to point out just a couple of things. Notwithstanding the appeal decision from the inspector, the documentation that appears with this application does not reference the neighbourhood plan, and also in places does not. It has inconsistencies, and this is particularly around the parking issue that we have a concern about. So the latest iteration of the block layout shows 1 parking space per dwelling, as was recommended by the officers at the highways officers at the previous application. But the transport plan and the design and access statement still refer to there being 4 spaces on site. The idea of moving 2 spaces out onto the main road is contrary to the neighbourhood plan policy 1-4H. Sorry, 1-5. Sorry, I just need to. I should have written that one down. So it's 1-5 F, which discourages parking on the highway. We all. So apart from that, we recognise the inspector's comments, but we maintain that the loss of the pub amenity remains an issue for us. It's a large village, it's a long village. The nearest pub after this one is 650 metres away and 900 metres away from the edge of the village. It was a popular pub until fairly recently. There were successive changes in ownership and management and some issues around the operation that resulted in it dropping in popularity a little. The marketing was undertaken during the pandemic, when demand was clearly going to be suppressed, and also the review of the usefulness of the pub was undertaken at that time. And recent experience in one of the other village pubs, the 2 remaining village pubs, shows that a pub business can be viable if managed correctly.
Are you coming to a conclusion there?
No, and that is pretty much it. I think so. Those are our key concerns, that we don't think the application as written takes enough note of the neighbourhood plan, and also we are with camera that the pub would still be a useful village amenity.
Thank you very much. Stand by if you would, in case there are any questions to you from members of the committee. I see none, so thank you very much for your time.
Okay. Thank you.
I was going to move first to Councillor Eileen Wilson, who wishes to comment briefly as local member, but before I do that, I do want to come back to our legal officer on the question of, I think the key question is that the inspector concluded that the loss of the building as a public house would not reduce community or service provision in Cottenham to an unacceptable level. That is a conclusion that the parish council would clearly contest. And there is the question also of to what extent the new parking arrangements as proposed would conflict with, I think this would be COH 1 to 5J of the neighbourhood plan. And I wondered if you could give us some guidance as to what weight we should put. I think you have already, but on the inspector's findings in that regard, given the continuing views of the parish council.
I think the inspector's decision carries significant weight. He has looked at everything, he has taken the neighbourhood plan into consideration. You are entitled to come to the conclusion you wish, but in doing so, please bear in mind that his decision, having looked at all of the relevant policies, does carry significant weight.
Thank you for that helpful guidance. So, Councillor Eileen Wilson, I wonder if you would like to comment briefly as a local member. I say briefly because that's the word you used to me, not because you're required to be limited to 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I just have one point that I would like to make, is that along with the parish council and camera, I find the loss of a pub to the village a significant loss. This pub was at the far end of the village. It's a very long village, and it served the residents who lived down that end of the village and was very popular. So, notwithstanding the findings of the inspector, I know that many people in Cottenham find this a significant loss to their amenity. And I accept that the inspector has found what he has found, but I just wanted to state that, make that clear that that's how I and many of the residents feel.
Thank you. I've asked Lawrence to put the planning balance up again so that we can focus our remarks on this as we now enter the debate. I don't know whether anyone would like to raise any of those points. I think we have Councillor Bill Handley who would like to comment.
I hate it when pubs close because, you know, they are important in our communities. And I think the loss of this one, you know, people around the district ought to take need and say, look, you know, if you can save your pub, do. But let's be real here. Let's be realistic. We've had clear steer from our senior planning, senior lawyer. You know, the inspector's decision of appeal carries significant weight. The only thing, and it makes reference to the neighbourhood plan, which is significant too, because otherwise we might have argued that, you know, it hadn't been taken into account. I think that we need to look at the only thing really that's changed is the resolution of the issue with bats. So in my opinion, that's the thing we should be talking about. And since it's pretty clear-cut, I don't know that we need a huge debate here, frankly, sadly, but that's the way I see it.
Councillor Richard Williams.
Thank you, Chair. I'll try and be brief. I'm probably going to say very similar things to Councillor Handley. Yes, I don't think we have a lot of choice here, given what the inspector has said. It is a frustration. Planning is about judgment. Planning is about opinion in large part, and we have one person's opinion who says no, no, no to the grounds of this committee, or similar the council came up with before. And whilst it's one person's opinion versus the opinion of people who are more sort of engaged with local communities, there we have it. I will just finally say, I find the parking situation bizarre. I think we all know that whoever buys these houses is just going to create some more parking spaces. That's obvious. So quite why Highways has done what they've done, I find bizarre. But again, it's kind of checkmate on that one. So I don't think we have a choice here, I'm afraid.
Thank you. And then I think it is next Councillor Dr. Jimmy Hawkins.
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a case where we need to learn the lessons as best we can from the appeal inspector's decision. The fact that the three reasons that we gave we didn't agree with is a big lesson. We might not like it, and as someone who's had appeals in my ward, you know, that we've not liked, and we're having to live with the outcome, you know, I say planning is not common sense, it's regulations and it's rules and balance. The one issue on which the appeal was dismissed has also been addressed, and we've got conditions to address those. So at the end of the day, we need to follow the planning rules, and from what I can see, there is no material reason really for us to refuse this. The inspector's decision carries significant weight. We must not forget that, but we need to learn from it going forward. So I will be voting for this application. Thank you.
Thank you. And next, Councillor Sanford.
Thank you, Chair. Just to respond to Councillor Jones's comments, when this premise was a pub, I can't imagine that everyone arrived by foot or bicycle, I'm sure there was a lot of cars parked in the area, and the provision of either 2 or 4 parking spaces, 2 probably seems adequate without causing congestion. As regard to the loss of the village pub, yes, I'm sure we all regret seeing long-standing pubs disappear, but no one has actually put forward a commercial case for retaining this as a pub. So in light of the fact that the issue with the bats has been addressed, I have to agree with my colleague, Councillor Dr. Hawkins, that we should go forward and approve this application.
Councillor Anna Bradman.
Thank you, Chair. I agree with my 2 colleagues who've previously spoken and others. It comes down to 10.4, does it not, on page 65, that in the appeal decision, the inspector concluded that the development did not result in an unacceptable level of service provision in Cottenham. He went into some considerable explanation of similar provision was provided at the Cottenham Village Hall, which has a licence. Admittedly, that's half a mile away, but a little more than half a mile away, but they felt the provision was available there. It did not harm the character and appearance of the conservation area or harm the functioning of the highway, which was the question I asked earlier, due to the under-provision of car parking. However, the inspector concluded about the matter of the potential for harm to protected species. That has now been resolved, so I propose, in the absence of any reason or material issues for refusal, I would propose we approve this.
Can I take that as a proposal that we now move to a vote, which I would like to second? I see Councillor Wilson has seconded that. So let's... Councillor Wilson, I'm sorry, was not seconding that, but we have, I think, had a sufficient debate. We have a proposal to move to a vote which is both proposed and seconded, so I will...
Sorry, forgive
right.
me, Chair.
Yes, forgive me. I will then take a comment from Councillor Wilson after that. We need to take advice from our legal officer on this.
It was just about the condition, re the plaque, so just wanted
Yes.
to...
That was what I wanted to mention,
Plaque.
the condition about the plaque.
Well, it was quite clear that the applicant indicated that they would accept, they didn't use the word plaque, but on the road side of the building, and I would have we need to include that as a condition. Do we have a wording? Do we need to look at a wording for that?
We can certainly come up with a condition.
Would members be reassured if we had specific wording on that point?
May I make a suggestion that the wording of the plaque comes down to the local member working with the applicant and the planning officer, and let them deal with it.
So we can do that under delegated authority. Helpful suggestion. Thank you, Councillor Howell. Members satisfied with that? Yes. And then I rather cut off Councillor Wilson, who was going to make a further comment before we move to the vote.
No, it was just about the condition for on the plaque.
Which we have dealt with. Right. Well, we're in danger of going round in circles, so to avoid that, I think we'll take up Councillor Bradnam's proposal that we move to a vote. I will, for what it's worth, second that, and we will now take the vote. And we'll electronically, if we may. Just having a practice run there. So we have 1 abstention, 8 in favour, so that application is approved. Thank you, members. We now move on to item 7, the compliance report, and I'm very glad to say that Jane Rodens is able, I think, to guide us through this and other matters on our agenda. So, turn to the compliance report on page 91 to 94 of your printed papers. did you want to say anything about this? Or right. Nothing to add. Right. So just to highlight that should members wish for specific updates on cases, perhaps that they have involvement in, please feel free to contact the Principal Planning Compliance Manager on any of these cases. Does anyone have any points they want to raise at this point? Councillor Bradman.
Thank you very much, Chair. I wanted to ask about Appendix 3, local inquiry and informal hearings dates scheduled for EN. Well, it's the first of the informal hearings. I just wondered if you had an idea of roughly when there's no date proposed as yet for EN 00216/21.
I hate to be pernickety, but we're not quite on appeals yet.
Oh, sorry.
We're still on compliance report.
Are you on 7?
Item 7.
Sorry, okay.
So any questions on compliance report? Let's move on directly then to appeals. And I think Councillor Bradnam's question there was heard. Do you need to elaborate or have you made the point?
Sorry.
Yes, perhaps let's clarify
yes. So what I was asking was
appeals.
On, this is hearing dates yet to be arranged, or some have been arranged, on Appendix 3, page 101. I was asking, have you, appreciate this relies on having qualified inspectors with this particular experience, but I just wondered if there was any indication of when land to the north of the old coal yard, Chesterton Fen Road, Milton, was likely to be considered.
And I'm sure Councillor Bradnam would be happy to take a written response on that later if necessary.
I can come back to you with a date on that one if we have one and let you know an update for that one. That's okay.
Right. So, appeals, item 8. Any other questions or comments on item 8? Councillor Dr. Timmy Hawkins.
On appeals, right?
Please, yes. Item 8, appeals.
Okay. I just, on page 97, we have an application that was refused at committee. It's one if we could have a copy of that so we can learn the lessons, please, as a planning committee.
Which application are you referring to, just for clarity?
Beg your pardon, 21030394, FUL.
Yes. Bancroft
And it was allowed.
Farm. Yes. So that was refused following at committee.
Refused at committee, allowed at appeal.
So it would be helpful for the committee
have a
to have
lesson to
some
learn.
comment later, perhaps in writing, as to why that was the case, so we can learn lessons from it. Good point.
Through you, Chair, I can send a copy round to councillors with a small summary, if that would be helpful.
That would be very helpful indeed. Thank you for that offer. So I think that deals with item 8 and brings us to the end of our agenda. Now we have the next meeting of this committee is on Wednesday, 13th of September. I would only add one thing, that when you go downstairs past the street, you may find a number of people who've taken trouble to set up there and would be very happy to take any money off you if you're feeling that way inclined. So with that, I draw this meeting to a close at 12:47. Thank you all very much.